Welcome back, everybody, to Bleeding Cool's weekly recap of Preacher Season 2. Today we're going to be taking a look at the penultimate episode of the season, On Your Knees. Yeah, that's right. We actually are 12 episodes through. There's only tonight's season finale. And even though there hasn't been a formal announcement yet, I think we're about 98% sure that there will be a Season 3. My overall takeaway, let me start off by saying, is my overall takeaway isn't anything too deep. I feel like right now we're at the point where it's kind of like the big summer blockbuster. You know what it is? Like Baby Driver, which is kind of like your big, loud blockbuster action movie, but also that's like so disgustingly smart and sharp with great dialogue and a great storyline and everything. So that's kind of like where I feel like we're at right now, where we're going to be getting a lot of stuff thrown at us the last 2 weeks. I think this week especially we had so much thrown at us. I'll be talking about in spare parts. But I'm very curious to see where last week kind of bridges into tonight. It's a season finale, so while my expectation is that we're going to see some kind of like cliffhanger type thing, I hope it's not something cheesy. My hope is it would be great if it just kind of ended with Jesse coming back looking for Cassidy and Tulip, only to find out that Cassidy and Tulip have been taken by his grandmother and that brood. I think that would be a great way to segue into the third season. But yeah, I think they're gonna know how to land this. I think they're gonna know how to stick the landing on this, so I'm not worried about that. Let me jump into spare parts because there's going to be some things I'm going to be talking about during that. When the episode began, we had the situation with Eugene and Hitler making their way out through the hole, kind of the Shawshank Redemption from Hell type escape route that they're going. But we see that Hitler and Eugene are going to have to go through Eugene's hell again with Tracy. What we find is that in every possible scenario that comes into play, Tracy ends up killing herself. And it turns out, and Eugene learns this most importantly, is that Eugene, his hell is his inability to forgive himself. Tracy is that ultimate guilt, and no matter what he tries to do to make things better, it always ends the same way. Not because of anything he's doing, it's because of who she is and what she's doing and the choices that she makes. That's why they all end up going the way that they do. What I also find interesting is that it seems like it's one of those, okay, well, we're just going to throw a couple more things at you, but Eugene seems ready. I mean, when the mascot comes out and we find out of the molestation story from Eugene's past and the fact that Eugene shotguns the mascot to death, and then when his father, Sheriff Root, shows up, I was thinking the same thing. But the fact that even in hell, that Eugene got some kind of, I guess, closure in a number of those instances, at least from hell standard, it kind of makes you wonder where things are going with Eugene. Like, is Eugene being used as some kind of sleeper agent against Jesse down the road? That I'm not sure about, but it just seems like things have worked out for Eugene so far. And again, when you're talking about hell, it does make you a little nervous. But hey, Eugene got stuff taken care of. Hitler and Eugene are out the window. We're going to move on to the Saint Killers. First off, just to be clear, we get a flashback of what Jesse did to the Saint. The Saint was beating on that truck for a week. For one solid week. They so subtly make sure that you know that was for 1 week. We see his family flashback, and we see that this is a man who is on some level deserving of redemption or at least some level of understanding. That he's not just a cold, bloodthirsty killer that he's been presented up to this point. He's a man who tried. Who tried to turn, who tried to do things a better way. His wife makes a great point. Your soul is where your goodness lies. And it's his soul and goodness lies with his family, and it's something that he really tried to hold on to. We see that really sweet moment where we actually see him smile when he's interacting with his wife and with his daughter, and the whole idea of putting salt in the milk. And we see the way he plays along and how it just, to make her smile, to make his little girl smile, make sure that she knows that as far as he's concerned, it worked. I think that was a big mistake in the sense of Jesse left the Saint alone for a week, trying to get his way out, full of rage and hurt over family memories. Not the best situation to be found in, and that's what Hoover and the Grail do. They find him. They pull him out, and essentially they offer him a deal. Do our work for us. We'll send you back out after Jesse and Tulip and Cassidy if you want to take them out too. But you just got to do our bidding, and we'll get you set up and everything like that. And we see that, again, that was the big project that Hoover had, that Harris Starr had mentioned earlier when we talked about, God forbid, on some level, again, I'm sure it was Hairstar talking about Hoover's, quality of work, but also the idea of if we have to unleash this thing, it makes things a little bit more uncontrollable. We see that he gets offered something that's next best thing to heaven, which makes me wonder what that could be, because they say there's no way that the saint can ever make it to heaven, which again I find odd. Um, and Hoover asked the legitimate question: "What more do you have to lose?" And we'll see that by the end of the episode. But the saint agrees, because really, what choice does he have at this point? He gets a chance for revenge. He gets himself out of that truck and get a chance to at least figure out what's going on. And remember, he has a certain percentage of a soul in him, so he's not quite the same as he was when we first saw him. Jenny Stone, who is watching Cassidy and Tulip with their back and forths. She has a great line when she says, "This is worse than waterboarding," and I can understand it. I really can. What surprised me the most was when Tulip was out in the hallway and all of a sudden the Saint shows up, and that's something I think this show does really well. It's the unexpected things, like, oh, okay, this situation's going to happen now. We're going to have to deal with it. The fight, I give it to Tulip. I think if there was ever an instance between fight and flight would have just hurt her more. Her willingness to dive in, not just then, but later on, against the Saint, full well know what her fears are, just to protect Cassidy and Jesse. I think there's a lot that needs to be said for that. In fact, all of them, considering the Saint is sent from hell and basically a nonstop killing machine, they all give it their due. They really do. We get a conversation finally between Jesse and the Saint. And we see Jesse trying to speak to the Saint in a manner that's a little more, I think, understanding now that Jesse's on his knees as opposed to when he had the Saint on his knees. But it's this idea still, and I think Jesse, past his anger, believed it even about the Saint, that no one's beyond redemption. There's no such thing as never. You can never say never. But unfortunately, the Saint has resigned himself to that. And we see an instance where, at this point, it looks like it's over for Jesse, except for Warden Manning, who walks in unexpectedly. I did not see this coming, and I'll make sure I get the quote right here. When she hits the Saint with, "Your hell is empty and must be filled with someone." It's a nice, not so subtle way of saying, you're coming back with us, or we're either going to have your daughter or your wife, or both of you take your place in hell, and you know full well that you don't want that. I did not see that coming. I thought it was interesting at that moment why they were taking such a level of importance on the Saint when you consider you had Eugene and Hitler running around escaping, but you find out in a couple minutes the reason why. As the Saint's taken away by the guard, Ward Manning says to Jesse, "You're lucky to have a man like Hairstar looking out for you." And that's what the whole plan was. The whole plan was basically, we're going to let the Saint out because he's going to be the bad guy, and Hairstar is going to look like the good guy yet again, who saves Jesse, and yes, also Tulip and Cassidy in the process, by quote-unquote taking down the Saint. Now, the problem with that big picture is kind of the problem that Jesse and the gang have with the Saint also. It does seem like everybody is using and playing the Saint as if he doesn't have some options to consider. Again, the Saint who's just a ruthless killing machine was one thing. The Saint who's a ruthless killing machine with a certain percentage of soul, he's not going to take this stuff too well. Again, getting played like that, being underground in the swamp was bad enough, but getting played by the Grail only to be sent back to hell, you know a lot of people are going to be paying the price once the Saint gets back out again. We see that there's a conversation that Tulip and Cassidy have with Jesse. Before then, interestingly enough, they have a conversation with Hairstar. And Hairstar, basically, his mindset has always been like, look, you two are with him. You don't really serve much of a purpose, but apparently he wants you around. So how are we going to make this work? How are we going to make this happen? And that is really those two getting all the information from Hairstar about what the plan is, about essentially making Jesse with Genesis the new Messiah, because, again, Humperdoo is just a cluster mess. There's just not anything viably to sweep a floor, let alone be the Messiah. So again, this forces the conversation that we have between Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy in the diner. There are some great lines in it. Cassidy, when he says, "Not bowing down to Lord Jesse," You can tell that that's both a shot at independence, but also I think a little brotherly competition, brotherly animosity. I think a lot of resentment over the issues that happened with Dennis. I think a lot of issues that happened with the issue with Tulip and his love, lust, craze for her. I think Tulip asks the straight question to him, and she says straight out, "I love you, Jesse, until the end of the world. But be honest with me. What do you really need us for?" And it's a question that Harry Starr asked, and it's a question that Jesse has to answer for himself. I know what he needs him for. They keep him grounded, they keep him stable, they give him a sense of himself, they keep him from losing his humanity. That would be so easy to do with a Genesis power. But Jesse right now, I think, is seeing big picture and not seeing the importance they play in him maintaining his level of humanity. Um, we see the shot of the Saint in hell, and the Saint is asking to speak to management. So we're already getting a sense that the Saint is not planning to stay there for long, or if need be, work broker some kind of side deal on his own. Very interesting in that. I'd be curious to see if Jesse ends up needing the Saint to help with family issues involving Cassie and Tulip. I might just be creating a side storyline there. I don't know. Probably am. But I think it'd be pretty cool anyway. So we get that sense. We then also see Jesse leaving the diner booth. Now, you'll notice that Tulip and Cassidy are already gone. My feeling, the general feeling I want you to feel in this is that those two have left Jesse to go do whatever he's got to do, and Jesse's resigned himself to go turn himself over to Harry Starr. And it really does seem like that's happening. I can't help but shake this feeling, though, that maybe the three of them have some kind of big plan going. Maybe it's wishful thinking on my part. Some of the previews for this week don't tend to kind of own that out. But I'm hopeful. I'm the eternal optimist when it comes to this. But we do see Jesse go out from the booth, and we see him make his way to Harry Starr. And Harry Starr gets on his knees, bows, asks Jesse to place his hand on his head as a form of blessing to begin the process. And what essentially he's going to do, and we see this in the sneak preview for tonight's episode, is he's going to trot Jesse out on kind of a small little mini tour, kind of like a band does when they're testing out new materials, you play the small bars and everything. But I think he also, as you'll see in the sneak preview clip, which I think I should have posted on this page, you'll see that he's also make sure that he wants to create a little miracle viral video to go in the process. So that's where we're at, this, folks. That leads us up to this evening's season finale, the end of the road, appropriately enough. Again, my name is Ray Fluke, Old Man Geek. I'm going to be doing the live blog tonight. We're going to be going on unofficially at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We'll have some cool things posted up, but we'll be going formally live at 9 o'clock. That's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be watching Preacher on AMC, and we'll be doing our live blog then to see how the crew wraps everything up. But I thank you guys for joining along for the entire time I've been doing this. I know normally I've done some written wrap-ups and I've gone to video. Hope you're enjoying them. I'm going to fine-tune them. And I look forward to having you guys on board with me tonight. Take care.